I'm now joined by barrister and co-founder of the Fair Cop Group, Sarah Phillimore. Sarah, very good evening to you. Thanks very much for joining us on the new primetime Independent Republic of Mike Graham. One of the things that really bothered me about the reduction in the minimum sentence for the killer of Zara Aleena was that one of the reasons given was that the harm that he could have somehow brought to his victim was lessened by the fact that she was unconscious quite quickly after the attack started, so that some of the injuries and some of the beating that he sort of brought to her wasn't somehow felt by her because she was unconscious. I mean, I found that an extraordinary sort of legal decision to come to.
Ooh, a chill went down my spine when you said that.
Yeah.
It's awful. It's appalling. It does make me ashamed of our criminal justice system that argument can be made and sustained. I mean, he tracked women that night. I think Zara was the fourth woman he approached. I mean, he could have killed many more. But I think the more worrying thing about this case is he killed her 9 days after he'd been released on license from prison. He was wrongly assessed by the probation service as a medium risk, and the inquiry that followed, the probation service were clear they just lacked the staff in order to carry out proper risk assessments.
Yeah.
So there's fundamentally something very, very wrong, I think even worse than trying to categorize his crime as less serious because he knocked her out quickly. I mean, I don't know how they can conclude that. She was discovered still alive and died shortly afterwards, but it was a 9 minutes of sustained beating.
Yeah.
Frankly, I don't care if she was conscious or not.
Well, surely it shouldn't be an issue, Sarah, should it? I mean, it's not for the parole board to make those kind of medical judgments. But also, this week we've seen the rows around Jamie Bulger's killer, John Venables, having a parole hearing, and various people, including the family, wanting to take part and be there, have been told they can't be, including the Times newspaper, who thought they should be there to see it, and apparently that invades his privacy. But I don't understand how parole boards week after week seem to make these mistakes. They seem to think that John Venables, who has been given parole twice and recalled twice because of his behaviour, which worries people about some of his paedophile tendencies, that he's now getting a third opportunity to be released. What on earth are they thinking?
Well, I think there's a clear distinction between what's happening with Venables and what was happening with McSweeney. I do think it's absolutely horrific to say that McSweeney should get time off because she may have lost consciousness. That's just, we've agreed on that. But Venables, I do think, is a very vulnerable individual. He was a child when he murdered another child. We've got to be careful, I think, not to turn the criminal justice system into a spectator sport. We don't have public hangings anymore. I can see a legitimate argument for having that kind of hearing in private, because it's not just about coddling a murderer. It's about giving some due recognition to his state of mind, which I think is very vulnerable. There's a big difference, I think, between what you've just discussed about McSweeney and what we're saying about Venables.
No, absolutely. But what it feeds to me into is the sense, as you say, that our criminal justice system is in a kind of crisis, because I'm not so concerned about whether he has the hearing in private or not. I'm more concerned he's having the hearing at all, given what's happened in the past. I mean, you could make all sorts of arguments about McSweeney and why he should not be paroled and why he should go to jail without parole, in the same way that you can make them about Venables. But if you grant parole to somebody, surely if they then breach their licence, not once but twice, you don't give them a third opportunity, do you?
I think that's a very fair point. And it goes back to what I said about why McSweeney was wrongly risk assessed. We've got to have confidence that these risk assessments are being carried out properly and that people have the time and the resources and the qualified staff to do it. So that actually is a good argument for a public hearing, to allow the public some faith and confidence that this is being done properly. Because as you say, this will be his third attempt at parole after being recalled, I think, for offences involving child sex abuse images. So it's not great. And the public do need to feel that they have confidence. It's a difficult balance, though, I'd say, with somebody who is definitely as vulnerable as Venables seems to be. We can't turn it into the equivalent of bear baiting or a spectator sport.
Yeah,
but no, I'd agree with you. I think there needs to be some transparency and confidence.
Absolutely. And if somebody is, as you say, vulnerable, although I'm not sure many people would want to use that description solely, then don't let him out. You know, if he's vulnerable, then clearly there's a problem if you let him out, because he's then likely to get himself into trouble or indeed be identified or worse.
I don't disagree, but I think there's something really poignant and sad when children kill other children, because it's, you know, what was going on in his life? How did he get there? Was he born or was he made? There's all sorts of questions that swirl about. And that does suggest to me that we do need to try and strike a balance between satiating victims, you know, need for vengeance and for justice to be seen to be done. But no, I think there is something very worrying, and I would want to be reassured that this decision to release him, if that's what's made, is on a proper risk-assessed basis.
Yeah. And I think any risk assessment that I would do, obviously I'm not in charge, would suggest not to release him. Finally, let's just finish up with Just Stop Oil. Another 40 of them arrested today. The police seem to be a bit confused about what they can do with these characters. 1 minute they don't want to arrest them, 1 minute they do. What's going on?
Well, I think it just goes back exactly to the question of resources we're just talking about. I mean, apparently there were 60 protesters going limp. I mean, how many police officers do you need to deal effectively with that? I think the problem is we're sending the police to deal with protests, campaignings, activists, and they don't have the sufficient numbers to do it safely and effectively. And that's my worry. And I don't know how many police officers were deployed, but I imagine you need at least, so I can see 3 on the video carrying 1 man. So say you need at least 3 officers to deal safely with 1 protester. I just don't think the police have got the capacity to deal with these. I mean, we've seen with the marches and the campaigns for Palestine, there's no way the police can contain that if things get ugly. And I just worry that we are sending the police out ill-equipped and in insufficient numbers to actually police effectively.
Yeah. I mean, it might as well call for it, the march to be banned, perhaps, but we haven't got time to discuss that, Sarah. Really good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Sarah Phillimore there, barrister, of course, and somebody involved with that Fair Cop group, which has been doing some brilliant work around people getting arrested for saying hurty words.